After God freed Israel from Egypt, he led them into the wilderness toward the promised land. At first, the people trusted God. He guided them with a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. But soon, fear replaced faith. The people complained about food and water, even though God provided manna from heaven and water from the rock. When they reached the edge of the promised land, they doubted God's power and refused to enter. Because of their rebellion, Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, yet God did not abandon them. Their clothes did not wear out, and His presence never left them. The wilderness journey reminds us, faith leads to promise, but rebellion leads to delay at God. Remains faithful. After receiving the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, you'd think the Israelites' journey to the Promised Land would be a straight shot, right? A victory lap. But their story, like our own lives, was filled with twists, turns, and some serious challenges. This next chapter of their journey is a powerful tale of faith, failure, and God's unwavering faithfulness. Fresh from their encounter with God, the Israelites were meant to march confidently into the land flowing with milk and honey. God had given them His law. His presence was with them in a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. What could possibly go wrong? Well, human nature, for one. Doubts and fears began to creep back in. Moses sent 12 spies, one from each tribe, to scout out the promised land. They came back with amazing reports. The land was everything God had promised: lush, fertile, and abundant. They even brought back a cluster of grapes, so massive it took 2 men to carry it. But 10 of the spies also brought back a report of fear. They spoke of giants in the land, fortified cities, and painted a picture of impossible odds. They said, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Their fear was contagious. It spread through the entire camp like wildfire. The people wept and grumbled against Moses and Aaron. They forgot God's power that had parted the Red Sea and defeated the mighty Egyptian army. They saw the giants, but they lost sight of their giant God. Only 2 spies, Caleb and Joshua, stood firm in their faith. They urged the people, "The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land and give it to us. Do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." But the people wouldn't listen. Their lack of faith had a devastating consequence. God declared that the generation that had refused to trust Him would not enter the promised land. They were sentenced to wander in the wilderness for 40 years, 1 year for each day the spies had explored the land until that entire generation had passed away. Only their children and the 2 faithful spies, Joshua and Caleb, would inherit the promise. So began the long, arduous 40 years in the desert. It was a time of testing and refining. The wilderness became a school of dependence. Every single day, the Israelites had to rely on God for everything. He provided manna from heaven for them to eat, a mysterious bread-like substance that appeared each morning. He provided water from a rock when they were thirsty. Their clothes and sandals miraculously did not wear out for 40 years. Even in their punishment, God's grace and provision were constant. He was teaching them, day by day, to trust His word over what their eyes could see. He was shaping a new generation, one that would learn from their parents' mistakes and hopefully choose faith over fear. During these years, Moses continued to lead them. Though he too would not enter the promised land due to a moment of disobedience, he faithfully taught the people God's laws and recounted all that God had done for them. As the end of the 40 years drew near, Moses delivered his final sermons, which we now have as the book of Deuteronomy. He reminded the new generation of God's covenant and urged them to choose life by loving and obeying the Lord. Then, the time came for a change in leadership. Moses, the great prophet who had spoken with God face to face, climbed Mount Nebo. From there, God showed him the entire promised land, the inheritance he would not enter. Moses died there, and the scripture says God Himself buried him. The mantle of leadership then passed to his trusted assistant, a man who had shown unwavering faith from the very beginning. Joshua. God commissioned Joshua with a powerful promise. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you." Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go." With this divine assurance, Joshua prepared to lead the new generation into their inheritance. Their first obstacle was a big one. The Jordan River, which was at flood stage. It seemed impossible to cross. But this was their first test of faith. Joshua commanded the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to step into the raging waters. As soon as their feet touched the water's edge, the river stopped flowing. The water piled up in a heap upstream, and the people crossed over on dry ground. It was a miracle that echoed the parting of the Red Sea for their parents. God was showing them that the same power that delivered their fathers was with them now. Their first target in the new land was the heavily fortified city of Jericho. Its walls seemed impenetrable, but God's battle plan was unconventional, to say the least. He didn't tell them to build siege engines or plan a surprise attack. His instructions were to march for 6 days. The Israelite army and the priests carrying the ark were to march around the city once. On the 7th day, they were to march around it 7 times, and then the priests were to blow their trumpets, and all the people were to shout. Can you imagine how foolish that must have looked to the people of Jericho? An army just walking in circles. It was a test of obedience and faith. The Israelites had to trust that God's plan, no matter how strange it seemed, was the right one, and they on the 7th day, after the 7th lap, the trumpets blared. The people shouted with all their might, and the massive walls of Jericho came crashing down. The city was theirs. God had delivered it into their hands, not by military might, but by their faith and obedience. Under Joshua's leadership, the Israelites went on to conquer the land, tribe by tribe. It wasn't always easy. They faced battles, setbacks, and their own moments of failure, like the defeated Ai, which came after one man, Achan, disobeyed God's command. This taught them another crucial lesson. Obedience needed to be total. The sin of one could affect the entire community, but through it all, God's faithfulness remained the anchor. He fulfilled every single promise he had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob centuries before. Joshua, in his final address to the people, summed it up perfectly. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled. Not one has failed. The Israelites' journey from Sinai to the Promised Land is more than just an ancient story. It's a reflection of our own spiritual walks. We receive God's promises, but then we face giants of fear and doubt. We go through wilderness seasons that test our endurance and teach us to depend on God daily. But just like he was with the Israelites, his presence is with us. His promises are true, and he calls us, just as he called Joshua, to be strong and courageous, to trust his unconventional plans, and to walk in obedience. Because when we do, we'll see walls come down and find that the inheritance he has for us is greater than we could ever imagine. Thanks so much for watching. If this story encouraged you, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.